Welcome to Selling Secrets. I'm your host, Josh Gay. Join me as each episode I interview experts in their field about spy films, action movies, literary heroes, video games, and much more. Do you know what it takes to make a successful Hollywood blockbuster, a best-selling novel, or an interactive gaming experience enjoyed by millions? Let's find out together on Selling Secrets. Joining me today, I have Luke from Bond's apartment. Luke, thank you very much for coming on Selling Secrets. How you doing?
Good, Josh. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, my man. It's been a while since you were last on the show. How's life been? How's the Bond's apartment channel and your podcast going?
Oh, good. Just still giving out interior decorating tips every day in Bond's apartment and, talking shit about everything on the podcast, allegedly. So no, I leave the shit talking up to Lorenzo. Just kidding, Lorenzo. I love you. It's going good. Everything's going good.
Was it you or Lorenzo who said Mission Impossible was better than James Bond?
I don't know if either of us said that. I personally would never say that. I know Lorenzo's a very big Mission Impossible fan, but you got to remember it's not Mission Impossible watches; it's Omega Bond watches. So I'm assuming at the end of the day, it's still Bond for Lorenzo too. It's just you heard the episode. I think there's a lot Bond could learn just as of recent, and from a storytelling standpoint and from a fan standpoint, I think.
Absolutely. And well, those two episodes of your show, Blunt Instruments, are what sort of gave me the idea to do this one. So as we said off air before we started recording, I feel privileged to be piggybacking off your content a little bit. But today we're talking about the future of James Bond and what that'll entail, and the most clickbait worthy headline of all: who should be the actor to play the spy James Bond? So I thought we'd do it a little bit different, though. And I know a few people have recently released some videos. Calvin Dyson did his one going through all the big names. But one thing that whenever I see all the tabloids come out and say Idris Elba is in talks for James Bond or Henry Cavill or whoever it is, I look at their age and I go, yeah, that'd be great if they're filming it today and they're releasing it next year. But the fact of the matter is Idris Elba's nearly 50, Henry Cavill's pushing 40. If we want to get an actor to play the character for more than 3 films before he looks like he's, got a turkey neck and starting to get old, realistically, EON needs to look younger, right? I mean, Daniel Craig was originally supposed to be the young guy, but he ended up 3 films in old and decrepit. So my idea with this is let's have a look at some of maybe the people who aren't being talked about as much. They might be some unknown British actors, or they're just the younger guys who I think could carry the franchise for several films. What are your thoughts, first of all? Because I know you and David have spoken about this, and one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on this instead of David is because David is a staunch Henry Cavill person, and I don't think I could sway David no matter what. So before we get into some of the names who I've got down to talk about, whose flag are you waving the most to take over the mantle?
So you're definitely right. David is very, very Henry Cavill fan. Henry Cavill's grown on me as of late, just because I've done some research and I've had conversations with David about him, and he's shown me some other things that he's done where he's slimmer, and I would say looks, Superman Henry Cavill, never in a million years. I would never stand behind that. I just think that would be nuts. But I've seen things where he looks much slimmer,
Hmm.
and it's kind of started to sway me. But for variety's sake, I always liked Richard Madden. I always thought he could have
Hmm.
done a good job. I mean, I say it like he hasn't been chosen, but that was the one that I was, and Idris Elba, like I love Idris Elba. And
Hmm.
15 years ago, that would have been cool. Maybe not even that long, 5 even, but that's just, I would be shocked. I would be shocked. But, he's just so talented and he's such a badass
Oh God,
and
yeah.
yeah, and effortlessly cool at the same time.
Hmm.
But I mean, we'll say Richard Madden. What's yours? What's your like mainstream choice right now?
Oh, mainstream. So I'm not a big Richard Madden fan. I watched him in what was that Marvel film that he was in recently?
Oh, the
Eternals.
Eternals. I haven't even seen it.
Don't bother.
Yeah,
It wasn't good. I wasn't. I didn't like him
that's
in that
that's
at
what I've
all.
heard. That's what I've
Yeah.
heard. It was Bodyguard for me that convinced me
Yeah.
that he could do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just find him some of the stuff I've seen him in. At least he's been quite wooden, and it's I guess a similar issue I have with Henry Cavill. Like they look the part, but they've yet to quite convince me
Right.
that they've got the chops. Um, Mainstream wise, I would probably say Nicholas Holt. I know
Okay.
he'd need to butch up a bit, but he's at that sort of right age. He's got the look. He's funny. He's charming. Like if they wanted to go for like a bit of a Brosnan or a Roger Moore feel, I reckon he could really pull that off.
hmm
Like,
Yeah, that would be an interesting one. It's all
mm,
it's all the same where I feel like even with Daniel Craig, it's like I feel like they'll cast somebody if it's not, one of like, it's if it's not your Henry Cavill, Tom Hardy, if it's not somebody like that, which God forbid Tom Hardy, I would be so pissed. Um, it would be like Daniel Craig where I would need to see him do it before I could
yeah.
even like imagine it. Nicholas Holt, I think would be good, but like
Mm,
until I see him do it, I wouldn't be able to tell you anything because I
yeah,
just picture
exactly.
like him from The Great, and he's like such a dick, but like also so good in it.
It's such a good show.
It
But
is such a good show.
he was in a war movie on Netflix. And it's going to bug me now what it is. I'm going to throw up IMDb really quickly so I can figure out what it was. But he was in a war movie on Netflix where he plays this guy who's a bit of a deserter.
Is
And
it
that
Sandcastle?
Sandcastle, that was it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that I mean, obviously it's not a Bond type role, but I thought, yeah, I could see him in Bond sort of playing it a little bit like that.
right.
Um, but yeah, so I've got a couple of names down in terms of younger actors, and
Okay.
some of these are big names. Like I've got a very big name in here, but then I've got some who may not be as big. And I want to get your thoughts on some of these guys because I think there's a lot of potential in this list. Some of them are being talked about, some maybe not so much.
hmm
Um, let's start off with one who I think would be able to carry it really well. And his surname is Hemsworth,
Mm.
um, but not the one that everyone would probably think of. I'm not thinking Chris, I'm thinking Liam. So Liam Hemsworth as the next Bond would be another Australian, and that's probably why
Uh-huh.
I'm flying that flag a little bit. But he's 32 at the minute, so he's in that really, I think, good age bracket where he could carry it a bit longer than, say, Daniel Craig did. You know, Daniel Craig was obviously 38 at the time of Casino Royale. Hemsworth doesn't look young, though. Like, he's got that sort of rugged, older look to him.
hmm
What are your thoughts on someone like that coming into the role?
So that's an interesting one. So I mean, I would definitely choose him over his brother,
Hmm.
100%. I would never, if you can hear the lawnmower, I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine, man.
Okay,
It's all
good. I
good.
was gonna freak out. Can you?
Little bit, but I mean, I'm in the middle of a
Ugh.
hurricane. I feel like I'm in the middle of a hurricane at the minute,
Okay,
so
in the eye of the storm.
we're all good.
Um, So yeah, I would choose him over his brother
Hmm.
100%. But I don't know. Did you watch that like Quibi show that was on for a minute, Most Dangerous Game? They actually
Yeah, it was
filmed that in
a
Detroit.
remake of that classic Dangerous Game movie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
I
was
saw
actually really
bits of
good
it.
in that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that and it wasn't necessarily, I mean, it wasn't like a spy thing, espionage, but it was like a thriller,
Hmm.
and I was shocked with how good he was in that. So before seeing that, I would say no, and after seeing it, I would say I would like to see him do something else similar to
Yeah.
Bond first, and then I can give you a better answer.
Yeah, well, because he's got the action chops, right? But I haven't seen
Right,
him necessarily do that sort of suave character that maybe his brother has done. But
right.
I reckon he's a big name that would bring a lot of money to the franchise and a
And
younger
a
audience.
lot of younger people, yeah, big time.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we need brought to Bond. Obviously, um, Craig, his whole tenure has sort of slanted a bit older, and you talk to kids, and none of them think Bond is cool anymore. They all want to be Spider Man or whoever the newest
Hmm.
superhero
Hmm.
is now.
Who's like 15?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So, but if the Hemsworth name is there, so you bring over someone who's got that connection to Marvel, I reckon that could really do them, uh, monetarily wise. At least it could go well.
right, right. I agree with that.
So next in the list is a second Australian. He has played alongside a Bond actor in a previous film, Luke Bracey.
Hmm.
Um, So he's been in a few action films. He was in Point Break, the remake of that god awful film.
Yep.
And he was in The November Man with Pierce Brosnan, which sort of got me starting to think of him for the role. But recently he was in a Netflix film called Interceptor, which, I mean, the film
Okay.
wasn't anything special. It was a bit of fun, a bit cheesy, felt like an action movie from
Is
the
that the
80s.
one with Hemsworth's wife?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
he plays the villain in that. And I
Okay.
watched that and I went, this guy could pull it off. He's also quite young. He's in his early 30s, I believe it is. So again, could play it off really well. But what are
Okay.
your thoughts on someone like him?
So I would definitely go with him over Liam Hemsworth.
Okay.
Um, November Man is like the one thing I've seen him in that's not kind of rom-comish. Like I
Yeah.
saw him in that Holiday movie, which I actually
Well,
really liked, that
I
Netflix
haven't
one, I
seen
believe.
that, but I've heard interesting things about it.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's a good
Yeah.
little Christmas movie. There's something about his look that I like more than Liam Hemsworth. I think he's got, and I don't know if it's just like a bias with Liam because of his like, you know, kind of like tie with Hunger Games and things like, with like just like the overly teen things he's done. I
Is
don't
he
know if
less of a
it's
pretty boy? Liam feels like he's
yes,
a bit too pretty.
yes, I would definitely say that. But the problem is, like normally, after Daniel Craig, I would say the pretty boy thing is out the window because he
Hmm.
wasn't. But Pierce Brosnan essentially is, and he
Yeah.
was one of the best in my opinion. So it's fucking lawnmower. Um,
You're all right, man.
as long as it's not just like overwhelmingly loud, I guess we're fine.
We're all good. We're all good.
But yeah,
I'm
I
not
would.
editing this out, by the way, as well. I
Okay,
like
good.
hearing your frustration in the
Oh
background.
yeah. Well, you're getting it. You're getting it. But yeah, I would pick Luke Bracey over Liam, and you're right. I mean, I thought that though. I thought the pretty boy thing with Liam, but it's
Mm,
like I think the pretty boy aspect for Liam would kind of. I think it's two things. I think it would take away from his performance. I think it'd be hard to look past it.
mm.
Number one, and number two, I think it'd be hard to look past like the like Hunger Games, the shit like that, the Miley Cyrus, the longest whatever Miley Cyrus movies in, just all that stuff. I think it'd be really hard to move past. So
Yeah,
I could, and Luke Bracey is more masculine looking in my
yeah,
opinion.
And God forbid we get Miley Cyrus singing a James Bond theme.
I know, I know. And by the way, I had no idea. I didn't realize Luke Bracey was only like 31. I definitely would
Yeah.
have pegged him like mid 30s at least.
Yeah, he looks a lot older than he is.
Yeah.
Now, how we're going to do this as well is out of all these ones that we go through, we're going to rank them above each other. And whoever we go, yep, that's the one we want to nail down, he's going to be sort of the one I'm going to be championing moving forward, I think. So next on the list, bit more of an unknown, but I reckon he's really got the look. And I've only seen him in horror films, but I think he's definitely a bit more of an actor than some of the other picks and names that are out there. And I think based on sort of how they went with Daniel Craig, I could see them going for an actor like this. So it's Oliver Jackson Cohen, English actor. He's 35 at the minute. He was in The Invisible Man recently, which is probably his biggest one, but also The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor. I've watched him in like all of those films, and I've just thought there's something about this guy that he's super charming and really talented actor.
Yep.
I reckon he could really pull it off well. What are your thoughts on him?
I think he looks like a crackhead. To be completely honest with you, I just can't get past. He's just like always looks like he's higher than a kite. I don't know if it's just like the strong, unbelievably strong jawline and kind of look that he has.
Yeah,
and it's just and I guess like it wasn't Hill House. Was it the other one where he kind of plays like? Was it the Bly Manor one where he kind of plays like a dick?
I think it was. Yeah. Oh, the Invisible Man. He definitely was. He was almost a bit of a villain in that.
Which I did like that. I did like that. I did, or I should say, I liked him in it.
I've just brought up his Wikipedia page, and I see what you mean about the crack look now.
Yeah, he just looks like a crackhead.
But then there's other photos of him in a tux, and I go, "Oh yeah, he's got the look." But all right, interesting. We'll move on then.
See, that's the thing, though. But you're right. He's got acting chops, and that's what actors do, right? But it's not so much. Well, I mean, there's different things. Like I'm looking at pictures of him now. There's different things where he doesn't look like a crackhead. But it's kind of like, I don't know. He would be a tough one. He would be a tough one for me to get on board with, and I don't know why.
Fair enough. Yeah, he doesn't
such a strong look.
Yeah, you're definitely going a certain way if you pick someone with that look.
Yeah.
All right. Next on the list is Phil Dunster. So Phil Dunster is probably the one who I really want the most to play the role. I believe he's 29 at the minute, so he's right on the younger end of the scale. Most people would know him from Ted Lasso, where he plays Jamie Tart.
Jamie Tart.
You do the English accent better than I do, so I'm not even going to try with that. But I saw him first in Strike Back, the Cinemax series, where he was like the tech guy for the team of soldiers, but he ends up going out on the field and he's got the gun in hand. And I think as he's got a bit older, he's sort of shaken off some of the boy look a bit more. And I reckon take away the Jamie Tart hairdo and the wankerish attitude, I reckon he's got that swagger, the suave look, the boyish charm. I reckon there's definitely something there that could really be cool for Bond.
Yeah. He so I do like him. And the thing about him is he's especially in Ted Lasso, like he's such a charming piece of shit. You know what I mean? That just shows how good of an actor he is. Like you can hate him, you can love him, you can question him. There's everything his character's supposed to convey, you can feel. He also has a very strong, specific look, but I would definitely, as of right now, it would be between him and Luke Bracey still
Yep.
for me.
Yeah.
But he definitely looks more the part than Luke Bracey does as far as the skin tone and the dark hair and I think yeah, and the boyish thing, I wasn't familiar with him before Ted Lasso. So,
Yeah.
you're right. If he loses the hair and has just like even a 5 o'clock shadow, the boyish thing immediately goes out the window for
Oh
me.
God, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I almost want him. You know what? I'll put him above Luke Bracey. So I'll make him number one
Shit.
for me right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. All right.
Yeah. You've sold
Um,
me.
now, this guy would probably be more known to American audiences who watch the TV show SWAT. He's another Australian actor. Um, we are looking
Sense of a
at.
bias here.
I know, right? I mean, I haven't picked an American, funnily enough,
No.
but we'll save that for another episode where we talk about maybe some older actors who could do it, because there's one American actor who I reckon could really pull it off well. But we'll get into that at a later time, I think. And I've never thought I would say an American would do James Bond well, but here we are.
Day and
But
age.
indeed. So the Aussie, though, from SWAT is Alex Russell.
Okay.
I've seen him in quite a bit, but I think watching him in SWAT was probably the thing that made me think he could pull it off really well. Plays a bit of a badass, bit of a rule breaker, all that sort of stuff. And I think again he's on that cusp of sort of, he's done some popular stuff, like he was in that found footage superhero movie Chronicle, but like the most popular thing he's done is probably SWAT, I'd say. And like he's 34, so he's in that good mid-30s range as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you take it from there, my friend.
So he was in Only the Brave too with Miles Teller, I think, and Josh Brolin. But like one of the
I haven't
firemen.
seen it.
That one was good.
Yeah.
Sad. Definitely sad. Which isn't a spoiler because it's a true story. People are like, what happened? I think he's a good looking dude.
Yeah.
I think he's one that I haven't seen a whole lot of, but I'm intrigued for sure. I would be very interested in seeing more. But his look, like I do like his look. I definitely could see how he could do it. I mean, like this is going to sound strange, but as far as like I always kind of imagined Bond not having too strong of a look in one or the other direction.
Yeah.
And so far of everyone, I mean, like Luke Bracey doesn't have like a strong look and he's just a good looking guy.
Yeah.
But Phil Dunster's got kind of a strong look. Liam Hemsworth is just, everybody knows who that is. I think of like look wise, he would fit the part best of who we've spoken about. But I think I would still pick like Luke Bracey or Phil Dunster over him.
There you go.
I think.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. He's probably lower on my list out of all the ones. Okay, before we move on, though, I'll ask you this question. We've talked about looks for a couple of these guys now. What are you looking for out of someone who plays Bond? Like, are you looking for that Hoagie Carmichael sort of look with the black hair and the bit of the comb over and everything, or have we moved past that now with someone like Daniel Craig who's sort of changed the look of Bond? Like, what's your ideal Bond look like?
That's a good question. I can say Daniel Craig completely, flipped that on its, completely flipped the script with what I would choose. I mean, who Jeremy Irvine is?
Yeah.
Somebody like that. That would be
Jeremy
my
Irvine.
like unknown. So he actually played young Pierce Brosnan in Mamma Mia 2. And he was in
Okay.
like that horse movie, horse movie, The Godfather. No, just kidding. Somebody like that. He's got like the tall, dark, and handsome look,
Hmm.
but I think he could also pull off being rugged.
Yeah.
Like Pierce Brosnan could do it somehow. I mean, when you see pictures of him in Remington Steele and then you see him in like Tomorrow Never Dies, you're like, yeah, he's got a slightly different look now. Not
Hmm.
as tan, not as Pierce Brosnan's signature long hair at the time is gone and whatever. But I think Jeremy Irvine, there's just something about that look, and the thing is, as an actor, I also don't know him too well. I've seen him in like a musical and I haven't seen much else.
Well, I'm looking him up now. He was actually in the Jason Bourne spin-off TV series Treadstone, which I tried watching and hated, but
That's
I,
right. That's
I might
right.
have to go back and rewatch that
And
now.
he's supposed to play Green Lantern.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
he is going to be Green Lantern. So I'd like to see, it's these are the things where it's like something like that, depending on where that, we have a channel over here called CW, and
Hmm.
that's where they have like all these, Red Arrow and all that
Teeny
shit
bopper
is
type
on.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And if it's one of those, I'm going to be a little annoyed because I think God, I'm going to say some mean shit here. I think he's better than that. No
No, I
offense
agree.
to
I
that,
agree.
but
Yeah.
and it's like you choose, he's an actor. He was in Mamma Mia, so you get your exposure, and then he's chosen things since then that don't point towards doing like a teeny bopper thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a Zac Efron thing. Like he was doing all the High School Musical and then 17 again, and then he's purposely chose everything opposite of that.
Yeah.
And then even like when by the time he came around and did The Greatest Showman, Zac
Mm.
Efron, it was like an unbelievably welcome thing to see him doing a musical, but it was like, the highest grossing musical of all time or something.
And
What I mean? It wasn't like
it wasn't a teeny bopper
right,
music.
right. And
Yeah.
like, you've got Hugh Jackman and Zendaya and Rebecca Ferguson and all these big names in there. And, the album went like triple platinum and shit. You know what I mean? Like
Crazy.
it had to have been the exact right thing for him to get back into that. Where
Hmm.
it's like, he's kind of doing something similar where he's, I mean, let's put it this way. Jeremy Irvine is good looking enough to play any teeny bopper role he could possibly want.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm sure he's been offered a lot of things, even if it's like, co-lead, third lead, whatever. But he's clearly gone out of his way to not choose these things. I need to do more research on this Green Lantern thing because if it is on CW, I'm telling you, I'm going to freak out.
Yeah. I used to love Arrow. It was probably what the first two series of it I thought were really good, but yeah, it went downhill very quickly after that.
Yeah.
And yeah. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I know
Um,
what you mean.
yeah, Irvine, I could see it. I don't know if like so we're talking look. He doesn't, for me at least, he doesn't look manly enough. And this sounds really petty, but like he doesn't look tough enough. But
Right.
again, I haven't seen him in enough to sort of to gauge that. Like I would need to see like go back and watch maybe Treadstone, for instance,
Right.
and see him in something like that because he looks a bit. Oh, it's the jawline or something. He just looks a bit young.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah,
and I trust me, I see that too, and that's where
yeah,
with a lot of these guys, it's like you need to do a lot of different things, and
yeah,
it'd be interesting to do some research. I mean, there's rumors that I don't even know if there's rumors, to be completely honest with you, that they'll choose somebody this year or announce it. You would assume because of the 60th, but if
I
they
doubt.
don't and there's time to watch these guys do other things, it's going to be it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, it'll end up being Tom Holland at the rate that they're making all these films.
Yeah. And by the way, it's HBO. HBO is doing this.
Oh, it's the HBO Max type ones. Okay,
Yeah.
that could be all right.
That I mean, that I'll tell you one thing. If you were able to see these CW things, you would be thrilled to know that it's
Yeah,
HBO. So that could
yeah.
definitely give him a little bit of a kickstart.
Because the John Cena one, that was an HBO Max one, wasn't it? Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Peacemaker. I completely forgot the name of it.
Yeah.
Um, well, I have one more name on my list. There's probably a few more who I could go through and go on and on and on, but one more who's like really stood out to me as someone who I would love to see, and that would be the son of Jeremy Irons, Max Irons. He's 36, so he's starting to get a bit older, but he doesn't look 36. Like he still
No.
looks very young, which is good. Like he looks like he's, that sort of, and that's the thing about James Bond. Like in all of the books, he's always described as like always like sort of looking mid 30s. So I reckon Max has got that right look. I watched him in, I think the first thing I saw him in, it was an adaptation of a Crooked House, I think it was, which was I'm going to Agatha Christie, like murder mystery type one. And
Okay.
I saw him in that, and he wears a white tuxedo. And I went, yeah, this guy looks
Oh,
cool.
nice. Nice.
And then he was in the remake or TV show, which AT&T, I think, did over in the States. It was a remake of 3 Days of the Condor, but the series was just called Condor, where he plays a CIA analyst. And I know you've seen that because I told you about that series. What are your thoughts on Mr. Max Irons?
So you told me about it, and then I immediately went and watched it. And yeah, I like this guy. So he would be my number one of all the people we've discussed today for sure. He Condor is a must see if you're gonna consider him for Bond. It's I think it's his best thing. What's the right way to say? In comparison, like if you're looking for, it's his layer cake at the moment. Yep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe he'll do something else. I hope so. I'd like to see him be successful because he is very good. But it would be my version of like a layer cake for him. Something that if you want to see why they would choose him, it would be Condor. Tall, handsome guy, darker complexion, definitely shows his acting range in this. He goes from being like kind of a damsel to being, the leading man, because obviously, you see what happens, right? Which kind of starts the whole show. He's an analyst and he's like, what the hell's going on? There's a little bit of like a love interest thing in there too. I mean, the show's got a lot of the the things you're able to compare with. You can kind of see him play like a leading man. You can see him play an action hero. You can see him play a love interest. You can see him do a lot of the things. He's just the most interesting to me too. And not to like, I'm sure if he were to ever hear this, he'd be pissed, but like also with his dad, Jeremy Irons, it's like, I'm sure EON knows who he is.
Oh yeah.
There's no way they don't. And that would be, this is where I wish we could find out more about the casting process. I don't know if it's like just because he's Jeremy Irons' son that he would just default get some notice, but I kind of like to think so, because Condor is a very, very famous spy thing. You know what I mean? Like Robert Redford did it first. So, it's not just like remaking or making some random spy thriller, and it's very well made, and he's fantastic in it. So that he would be my number one choice of everything we've spoken about. What do you think about Max?
He's right up there. like for a very long time before Phil Dunster, he was like my number one pick, and he probably realistically still is. Have you watched season 2 of Condor?
Yep.
Yeah, so when he's sort of playing it a bit darker, like he's got PTSD and he's smoking in bridges, and it's more of a spy story compared to the first series, which follows the original film and the book a lot more. I watched that and I went, yeah, this guy's really got something. Like the first series, I saw it, but then it really nailed it for me in that second series. He takes a bit more charge, a bit of a badass.
Yeah.
He can be callous, he can be charming. Yeah, like one of my top 2 picks by far, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a weird series over here though, because it's on like Epics and like
Yeah.
it's just not easy to access.
Well, yeah, so I know because AT&T did it originally, then Epix picked it up for the second series or
Yeah.
something.
Like I think you could watch the first season on Amazon Prime.
Yeah. Well, in Australia, it's on Stan, which is one of the streaming platforms here. So both seasons are on that. So I
Yeah. Okay.
highly recommend if you've either got a VPN or if you're in Australia, check it out on Stan because it's along with all the Bond films until they get rid of them and they
nice.
find their home just on Prime. It's definitely one of the reasons to have a Stan subscription, I would say.
Yeah. Stan, that's a funny Stan
I know,
makes me think of like
bizarre.
Eminem.
Literally. Well, I think that's why they did it, like Stan, like fandom sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's owned by
Stan.
like Channel 9 or something here. Like it's just a stupid name. Like it's like Hulu. What is Hulu? Like fucking
Huge. I don't know why.
but we don't have Hulu here. So go figure. Like
Oh, yeah.
doesn't exist. So
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah, it's one of those weird things, my friend. Well, let's wrap it up here. Out of all the conversations that are being had, though, I mean, let's touch on some of the tabloids a little bit. Are you excited for any of the big names that are being thrown around in contention for Bond?
Oh man. Honestly, not entirely thrilled, to be completely honest. It's kind of like, and don't get me wrong, not that's a little harsh, but Henry Cavill seems to be the standout, and I don't know if my excitement's kind of at bay because I just like I never know what Eon's gonna do. You know what I mean? They never seem to go right, which is exciting. And then at the same time, it's kind of like, he almost got cast before. Now he's older. Now he's a bigger actor. Does that change things for the better, for the worse? It's just like, I know whoever they choose, there's going to be a lot of, I don't want to say hate. It's just going to be, there's going to be a lot of buzz and on both pressure. Sides. Yeah.
Yeah,
once they choose this person, it's going to be 50-50 until the film comes out, no matter who it is, and then there is the people that I would just be so pissed. Like if it's Tom Hardy, I'll honestly be really, really pissed, and it's just, I just don't see it. I don't. And he's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. He is fantastic, but I just do not see that at all.
Not now. I mean, maybe back in like Inception time.
Yeah.
Maybe, but even then, I don't know. He's in a way the same with Henry Cavill. I think if I saw Henry Cavill as James Bond, you know what you're going to get. Now, is that a good thing or not? I don't know, because do we want some and this is something that you and Lorenzo spoke with, right? We want a bit of consistency from Bond. So on one hand, Cavill would probably bring a bit of consistency and what you'd get with someone like him, right?
Right.
Even Richard Madden to a point, what you're going to get from an actor like them. And that does bring a bit of consistency and tonal consistency with it, which I think the franchise has lacked for a while now. Was that to do with Daniel Craig? Maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, no one's lighting my fire that's in the tabloids at the
Yeah.
minute.
And the other thing too is like the Henry Cavill thing on a positive note is he is somebody like with The Witcher that is so obsessed with this show and then
Hmm.
that game that it's probably some of his best work, if not his best work. And
Yeah.
I know that there's a similar feeling towards Bond for him.
Yeah.
So if he were cast, this would be, I personally think, for him the role of a lifetime.
Oh God, yeah.
And not just because it's Bond, but because I think he's a huge, huge, huge fan. I mean, it'd be like if one of us were to get cast. Like
Yeah.
you're talking to somebody who knows the character in and
Yeah.
out, up and down. And I think that would be that in itself is what makes him the standout for me.
Yeah. I
Nothing
agree.
else but that. Don't get me wrong, he's handsome, he's tall, he's a leading man, uber famous now. But that is, if I were to sit down in the boardroom with Eon and they'd be like, why Henry Cavill? That would be the first thing I would say because
He's a
I think
nerd.
he's obsessed with
Yeah.
this character and
Yeah.
he wouldn't fuck it up.
He'd bring a lot of passion to the role. Like
Right.
the way he talks about Warhammer, for God's sake, like he's a
Yeah.
massive nerd. And
Mhm.
like you said, like I think there's a real passion there for Bond and I think it's a bit of unfinished business for him as well,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah. You have a little chip on his shoulder
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, and the thing is too, like, if he were to play Bond, the Daniel Craig thing with the whole like I didn't want to do it and then I went into the screen test. It's like fuck off. Like you didn't want to do it. Like
Yeah. You know
you
how
don't have
much
to do
money you were
anything
making.
now. You know what I mean? Not to mention like your shittiest Bond film is still, and by shittiest, I'm not going to choose which one, but critically speaking, is like a 60 something on Rotten Tomatoes. It's still better than most films,
Yeah.
critically speaking. So it's like you can't run around acting like you just made these kite surfing Bond films. Like you made good films,
Yeah.
especially Casino and Skyfall. And then obviously critically No Time to Die. But it's like, I don't want somebody coming in here like, oh, like Barbara was like begging me to audition and I didn't want to do it. And I was like, okay, like nobody says that. Who talks like that? You know what I mean? Like, but it's like for him to come in and always, he just seemed to bitch a lot. You know what I mean? Like about being Bond. And don't get me wrong, like, he loved it and everybody loved seeing him crying at the end of No Time to Die filming and all that. But it's like, like when he went on Colbert and announced that he was coming back, I had like goosebumps. I like had lost my mind. But it's like in his eyes, it's like, how do you know it's not like because they're giving him 30 million or because he, as an actor, he's like, well, I need to finish the story. Like does it have anything to do with the character? And like Henry Cavill, I think he would be like this. I'm literally going to go back and read every novel 100 times. You know what I mean? Like he would just absolutely freak out about playing this role.
Cavill would bring the same passion that Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan did. Like Pierce and Roger never said a bad thing about the role. They always, until Roger was a bit old and he said, I feel a bit icky now. But like Pierce, even Die Another Day, like he has nothing but good things to say about the character.
Yeah.
And I think you need someone like that who's just, a fanboy, right? That's going to champion it and just keep pushing it forward.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point, what you brought up with Pierce and Roger. I mean, like Pierce had to be called and like let go.
Yeah.
And like there's rumors it was a high number of money he wanted, a high amount of money or this or that. But it's like when the Bourne film started coming out, like he didn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just he wasn't young enough anymore. He wasn't born enough anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like he didn't really stand a chance. But like it seems most actors in that position know when their time's coming to an end. It's kind of a mutual thing, and I feel like Henry Cavill would be in that position if he were cast when his time would be coming to an end, but I know he'd be somebody who would probably be so bummed that it's all said and done, and
Yeah.
not where Daniel Craig is like, yeah, I'm sad, but like, I'm also making 100 million to do Knives Out 3 times. Like, I really don't give a shit.
Yeah.
But and Knives Out is another movie that's unbelievably good and critically acclaimed. Like, he's just going to keep doing great things
Yeah.
and hopefully one day get nominated for an Oscar. I'm surprised he didn't get nominated for a Tony for Macbeth. From what I heard, he's really good in it. And Ruth got nominated. So, he's a true thespian, is Daniel Craig. You know what I mean? So I would like to see somebody who geeks out about it like we do.
Yeah, I think that'd be very cool. I'd love to see someone who goes on the YouTube shows, when they do the press junkets and the press shows.
Mm-hmm.
You see like a lot of the Marvel and DC actors, they go on some of the YouTube channels that are all about the comic books. It's not just going on Colbert. And I think to have someone like Cavill, let's just say Cavill, for instance, right? If he was to come on and do the press junket and you have him talking with someone like David Zaritsky on YouTube, I reckon that'd be very cool because you'd get a much, much more exciting conversation. Don't get me wrong, I love David's interview with Daniel, but I think someone like Cavill and David, their conversation about Bond would just go so deep, and gets me excited.
I think Henry Cavill would want to go to David's house and see his basement.
Yeah.
I think I truly think Henry Cavill would be blown away by David's collection. And in David's interview with Daniel Craig, you could tell that Daniel was definitely welcoming the questions David had. Because they weren't the typical, like, how does it feel? Like, David just was like, I run a fashion or a lifestyle blog. Like, that's what I want to ask you about. But Daniel Craig just always seemed to be somewhat agitated. It wasn't. Yeah. And I thought in his David thing, it was the least agitated he seemed, but he just always seems agitated. And, and that's why, like, some of the Bond folks were out and got his autograph at Macbeth, and he was taking pictures and signing things. Like, even then, he comes out and he waves the same way, jumps on top of the Yukon, waves a little more. I was just like, I wonder if he just hates the fact that there's people out there. It's just, you always, he's one, I want to break this glass and slash my wrist away from having a meltdown, it looks like. So who knows?
He's not Hugh Jackman, that's for sure. I want someone like Hugh Jackman who's just going to get out there and have a bit of fun with it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Luke, let's tie it up here. We've been going for nearly an hour now. So what's coming next on Blunt Instruments for you guys? What's in the works for the podcast?
So we're going to finish up the Mission Impossible kind of series that was heavily brought on by Top Gun / the release of the new Mission Impossible trailer, and we kind of started talking amongst ourselves about how it kind of seems like Tom Cruise might be doing Bond better than Bond in Mission Impossible, and not so much that, we touch on it, that they kind of take from each other and learn from each other and whatever, but they're making fun films that people leave the theater ready to take on the world after seeing, and they feel like a superhero or a spy. And yet at the same time, it's making an uber amount of money. And then on top of that, it's like receiving almost perfect critical reviews. So I'd like to see Bond kind of get back into that. So the third episode of this series, where we've posted some questions about what the Bond community thinks Bond can learn from Mission Impossible. And I'll give you a little spoiler. I'll read one or two. So we've got Be More Fun.
My answer.
Yeah, that was by somebody. Consistency in the release of the films is one. And then I'll do one more here. Somebody else said have more fun. Somebody else said consistent releases. More complex missions, which makes them more suspenseful, and dare I say, badass. So we've gotten, I'd say, about 20 responses of what we'll go through in the third episode. Basically, after people listening to it, we wanted to hear if they agree or not. And shockingly, I didn't get a single response to that question that said like nothing or
Yeah,
Bond is better. You know what I mean? Like it seems like the general consensus is, in a good way, Bond could learn some things from Mission Impossible. So
absolutely.
that's what's coming down the line for us. So
Fantastic. And what's coming down the line for Bond's apartment?
I've actually got quite a bit of YouTube videos planned. So the next one I want to do is, I just released that one this past week, of that Scotch and soda polo. But the next one I want to do is actually going to be it's kind of like a budget Bond thing, but in a different approach. It's actually still getting these Bond items and doing these Bond things, but how to budget for them and how to do it in a way to where maybe you can't necessarily afford to do it all the time or whatever it may be. How can you still do it? Not like a sartorial version of it or like a thrifting version of it, true version of getting these Bond items, the Sunspell, end peel or whatever, but how to do it in a way where it's not going to break your bank. So that one I'm going to do next. And then also had some people kind of give me some ideas of what to do with that as well. Let me see if I can find them here in my notes.
Well, that'll be good for me because saving up to have a kid, all of my money's going towards that. So if I can even afford one Bond piece at the minute, it's going to be a while.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to do it because I had somebody reach out to me and ask me how can I afford all these things? And I was like, to be completely honest with you, it's not an affordability thing. It's a moderation thing, or buying things that, like a good example is the Connolly Gabino jacket. That's like almost a $700 jacket. Did I buy it? No. Was it sent to me? No. It was a 30th birthday gift. And I'm not saying, so for your birthday, ask for these things. But it's like, I turned 30 and my parents kicked around the idea of a party. My fiance kicked around the idea of a party. Her parents were asking, what do we get Luke? She didn't know what to get me. My parents didn't know. And then eventually I was like, you know what? Here's the deal. I'm going to throw this out there. And if the three groups want to split it, go for it. I don't want any of you to buy it on your own. Can each of them? Yes. They all could have went and got it by themselves for me if they wanted to, but it makes it easier on people's wallets. And because it was a 30th, it was like a milestone instead of some big party, spending a couple grand at some restaurant to have my family or whatever the case may be. I was just like, this is a particular item. For some reason, if I don't ever get my hands on it, I think it will bum me out. So if you're looking for an idea and if you guys are willing to go in on it with each other, this is it. So that, you know what I mean? So it's like, from the outside, they're like, oh, Luke's got this and that and this and that. But there's pretty much a story behind each one of them. Yeah. And I'm not buying these things once or twice a week. It's once a month, once every couple months, maybe. Once a month is even pushing it. Once every few months, I would say. And even then, that's a maybe.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like for me, buying, I would call like Bond fashion items almost statement pieces, right? Are you going to wear a Connolly jacket every day? No, right. Like it's something that you're going to wear out and feel special wearing. It's not, you're not wearing it with a Uniqlo shirt. Like you're going to dress up to wear something like that. And you're going to feel special. So I think by making that purchase special as well, and it's not, oh yeah, I'm just going to go out and buy a jacket. Like you're putting a bit of effort into saving for it, or it's purchased for an occasion. I think that makes it special as well, outside of it just being Bond.
Yeah. I mean, and even like the commando sweater, that was one that I always liked him in, but never knew if I was going to get it. And then eventually I got it, and I got it because David gave me a hell of a deal on it. So it's like now we've got this guy that's become a really, really close friend and a huge mentor, and then somebody that I've been following and watching for 10 years now and plus. Now he and I are like doing things like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not just like, oh, I wanted it, so I went online, dropped $500 and I've worn it once. No, it's like the opportunity arose to get it for a much better price. It was from David of all people in his basement. You know what I mean? And he was like, you want to pay me now? You can pay me in 4 years. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? It was just like, it was, you know what I mean? Just, it's not always how it seems, you know, and there's ways to do these things and accomplish these things that aren't just, you know, like the typical flashy ways to buy them or whatever it may be. You know, there's a method to my madness, and I'm going to try to share it with people. So,
and you're not bankrupting yourself with credit card debt.
Right.
Either.
Right. My fiance. And I honestly think I could say, I don't think I've purchased any of my Bond stuff on a credit card, including the vintage Omega and the GoldenEye Omega, paid in full. You know, it was kind of like I finally have the spare change for it. You know, my fiance's like, you stare at this shit on the internet 40 times a day, just buy the fucking thing. You know what I mean? I was like, all right, I like literally, like, I just probably sat there for 6 months with my finger like this. And then when she finally said it, boom, done. You know, on its way. Doorbell's ringing already. So, you know, that's it. That's what's going on.
I love it. And I'll make sure, obviously, we'll leave links to all of your channels in the show notes of this episode as well. Thanks, Luke, thank you again for coming on the show. Had an absolute blast talking all things James Bond with you. And let's do this again soon. Let's do it a bit more frequently now that I'm actually creating the podcast again.
Anytime, man. We'll have to have you come and join us too.
Done. Sounds good, my friend. I loved last time I was on, so
yeah, me too. We got a lot of good feedback from that episode, actually. They were like, this is like the nicer Jake.
Well, we won't say anything mean about Jake because he can't defend himself.
No, he can't. He can't.
Well, thank you again, Luke. It's been an absolute pleasure. Everyone go and check out Bond's apartment. I'm sure you all know who Luke is anyway. He's far more famous in the Bond community than I. But Luke, a pleasure as always, mate.
Thanks, buddy.